Okay, so now we're going to talk about inner axle spacing and weights. So we got a gravel truck, tandem drive, and a tridem pup. Okay, so to figure out the weights on this truck, what I did is I looked at the steering axle tires, and the steering axle tires are 11 inch. So to figure out the legal weights, do 11 inches times 254 times 2 because you have 2 tires. So that number comes out to be 5,600 kilograms. I just rounded up. It was just under 56. So you have some drives here. They're allowed 17,000. These are all legal weights. And then on the pup, it's a tri, so you're allowed 21,000. The only way I can get 21,000 on my pup is if my inner axle spacing, which is measured from the center of the last drive axle to the front axle on the trailer, if that measurement is 5.5 meters or greater, you're allowed 21,000 on that pup. Okay? If that 5.5 is less, 5.4, 5.3, or 5 meters, for every 10 centimeters you're under 5.5, you have to reduce your weight by 500 kilograms for every 10 centimeters. Okay, so this unit in combination with the tire size up front, you're allowed 43,600 kilograms, and those are legal weights, no permits involved. Okay, I'm standing in front of a tri-drive gravel truck with a quad wagon, 4-axle. Okay, the steering axle on this truck has got 2 tires. They're 385s. So the math on this is a little bit different than what we just did before. So with 385s, we take 385 times 10 times 2, because there's 2 tires, and that gives us 7,700 kilograms. Okay, but by regulation, the max we can go on this configuration is 7,300 kilograms. So we're allowed 7,300 kilograms on the steering axle. We're allowed 23,000 kilograms on the drives with a tri-drive permit. And on our quad wagon, we're allowed up to 31,000 kilograms. Okay? So one thing we got to remember is the inner axle spacing must be 5.5 meters or greater to get the max weights. Okay? So how to measure that is, what I'm going to measure from is the last drive axle, the center of the last drive axle, to the center of the first trailer axle. That has to be 5.5 meters or greater. Okay, this combination, we're just at 5.5 meters, so we can get legal axle weights. If you're under 5.5 meters, for every 10 centimeters you're under, you've got to reduce your weight by 500 kilograms. So just remember that. So this combination, you can get 61,300 kilograms if all the inner axle spacings are correct, which they are. So you're allowed that weight. That's your GVW on this unit. Okay, so I'm in front of a quad wagon here. We've got 4-axle trailer. It's a gravel box. Okay, so what I want to talk about is the weights. Okay, so on this configuration, you're allowed a max of 31,000 kilograms. Okay, so just don't get it in your head since you have a tandem, you're allowed 17 and 17. That's not the case. You're only allowed up to 31,000 kilograms. Okay. So I'm just going to finish up on inner axle spacing. So the measurements you're allowed between 2 tandem axle groups is 5 meters. Between a tandem and tridem axle group is 5.5 meters. And from 2 tridem to tridem is 5.5 meters. So anytime you're under those measurements, you're going to have to reduce 500 kilograms for every 10 centimeters you're under those measurements. Okay? Okay, so right now I'm standing in front of a steering axle on a gravel truck. It's a tandem drive gravel truck, and we've got a 2-axle pup. So in Alberta, you're allowed 7,300 kilograms if you have the right tire size. So the tires on the front end of this truck are 11 inch. So you take 11 inches times 254 times 2 because you have 2 tires, and it's just under 5,600. So this truck would be allowed 5,600 on its steering and 17 on its drives. If the tire's in millimeters, let's say it's a 385, you take 385 times 10 times 2 because you have 2 tires, and that gives you the mass the front end can handle. Alright, now that we've covered some inner axle spacing issues, some weights, we're going to talk about fines within Alberta. So within Alberta, for every 100 kilograms you're overweight, you get charged $20 up to 5,000 kilograms. If you're above 5,000 kilograms, you're going to get charged $35 for every 100 kilograms you're overweight. Okay? let's say if you're running under a permit for weights, so if you're over the permitted weight, you're going to get charged $25 for every 100 kilograms up to 5,000, and for over 5,000 you're going to get charged $35 for every 100 kilograms that you're overweight. So these fines add up very quickly. So in BC they've got basically a base rate, a base charge of $115. That's flat if you're overweight no matter what. And then for every 100 kilograms above that, you get charged $11.50. So now we're going to talk about self-propelled equipment. In Alberta regulation, it states no self-propelled equipment, so that would be like a rubber-tired loader, a rock truck. You cannot go on a highway if a single axle group is over 11,000 kilograms or the whole machine weighs over 22,000 kilograms. Okay, so now what we're going to do is talk about dimensions. Okay, so with dimensions, I'm going to talk about flag requirements, lighting, and dimensional signs. Okay, so with that, anything 2.6 meters or 8.7 feet or wider is going to have flags by day and lights by night. The light facing forward has to be amber in color. The light facing rear is going to be red. Anything 3.05 or 10 feet is going to have the flags and lights plus dimensional signs on top of the cab of the truck or on the front bumper and also on the rear of the trailer. Anything 3.35 or 11 feet is going to have all of what we just talked about, plus it's going to have to at least have one amber flashing light visible in 365-degree directions. Most people will have two rotators on top of the cab. Some people may have a rotator on the cab and one on the back of the trailer. Also, loads 3.85 meters or greater, which is 12.7 feet, cannot travel from 3 p.m. preceding a stat holiday or a weekend, so that would be like on a Friday. So from 3 p.m. to midnight, let's say on Friday, loads over 3.85 meters cannot travel. But from after midnight, 12:01 midnight on, through Saturday they can travel. But also they cannot travel on a Sunday or a stat holiday. Okay, so now what we're going to do is talk about how to test your electric brake system. First step, disconnect your plug. Second step, pull the pin. Third step, hop in the cab. Pull ahead slowly, your brakes should come on. If your brakes don't come on, usually that means your battery's dead or you have a wiring issue. So let's say you get stopped by transportation. If your breakaway system doesn't work, A, you're going to get put out of service, B, you can get a $230 fine. So just remember, each time you're going to pull the trailer, first step, you're going to disconnect your power source, okay, your brake plug. Second step, pull the pin, pull forward, the brake should come on. Okay, so now we're going to do a little bit of recap on weights. So I'm going to go over some different weights and configurations. So let's say you have a 2-axle gravel truck, steering axle and drive axle. So on that steering axle, you're allowed up to 7,300 kilograms with the right tire size. That's without a permit. Your drive axle with 4 tires, you're allowed up to 9,100 kilograms. So let's say we go to a tandem drive gravel truck. Steering axle, again, you're allowed up to 7,300 kilograms with the right tire size. Whether the tire's in millimeters or it's in inches, okay? The drive axle, it's going to have 8 tires, it's a tandem, you're going to be allowed up to 17,000. These are legal axle weights. Let's say you have just a straight power unit, so 1 steer axle, 2 drives with a 5th wheel with no fixed equipment. That front steering axle, the max you're allowed without a permit is 5,500 kilograms. Anything with fixed equipment, or let's say a gravel truck, you can go up to 73. So fixed equipment would be, let's say, it's got a winch. If it's a winch tractor, you can go up to 73 on the front end. You can also permit above that, okay? So we're going to talk some configurations here. So let's say you have a tri-dome axle group on a tri-drive truck. Without a permit, you're allowed 17,000 kilograms. Okay. With a permit, that tri-drive is going to be allowed 23,000 kilograms. Okay. Let's say a tri-dome gravel trailer, you're going to be allowed 24,000 kilograms. With that, to get 24,000 kilograms, your axle spread is going to have to be from 3 meters to 3.7 meters. Okay, so the axle spread is the center of the front axle to the center of the back axle. Okay, that spread has to be between 3 to 3.7 meters. If you're under that, you're only going to get 21,000 on that trident. Okay, so I think we've talked about all the different configurations and weights. So remember, if it's just a power unit that just has a fifth wheel, tandem drive, and one steering axle, you're allowed 5,500 kilograms. If you have fixed equipment, let's say you have a winch, a crane, or it's a gravel truck, you're allowed up to 7,300 kilograms on the steering axle without the permit, as long as you have the correct tire size. Okay, that was a recap.